Alright guys, so I figured today I would do a little bit different of a video, something with a little bit different format. Basically talking about my opinions on the best first time seat time drift car, and just kind of give my opinion on it. I know there's some videos on YouTube about it. I was just going to give my opinion on what I think it is. A little bit of background on myself. Of course, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I actually do already own a 350Z and also the IS300 here. So I have those two, but what you may not know is that I've actually owned a bunch of different cars in the past that you would consider good first time seat time drift cars, all the way from ranging from S13, S14, E46, IS300, 350Z. I've pretty much owned all of the ones that are typical, I guess, that people go for whenever they're first starting out trying to get into drifting. Also today I was going to answer a few questions that I had about going to drift events and what to expect, as far as tire wear, what the atmosphere is like, and just kind of an overview on the different drift events. Now I've been to 2 separate drift events, but 3 total drift events. I've been to Lanier. Technically, I've been to Lanier 3 times, but y'all didn't get to see the first one because it was pouring down rain. They were still doing the event, but it was pouring down rain, and there was absolutely no way that I could film. And it was my first drift event ever, and let me tell you, it was a very interesting experience. Actually driving, it was my first drift event ever actually driving, and it was an experience, but definitely one that there was just no way that I could film. So I've been to Lanier 3 times, and I've actually driven at Import Alliance 1 time, but I've been to a number of drift events probably in the past 9 years. So I'm just going to give you a little overview on what to expect, and also just talk a little bit about the mentality behind it as well. Some things that I was concerned about that there was basically no answers for on YouTube. But first things first, let's get into some previous cars of mine, and so you can really understand where I'm coming from whenever I actually do tell you what I believe is the overall best drift car, especially if you're just starting out. So first things first, I'm going to start with the first car that I ever really dove into to try to get into this sport and to try to get into the sport of drifting, and that was my S14. I actually bought an S14. Granted, this was 9 years ago, so it's a different atmosphere now, but it was a full rolling chassis, had all the interior. The car was whole, front bumper, rear bumper, doors were fine. The car was straight. It was just primered. It was definitely like somebody was gonna paint it and then just didn't. I bought that car for $600. Imagine that now. An S14 rolling chassis, full, $600. All right. So I got it back home. I actually had a 1JZ non-VVTi motor that I was going to put into it, and I had an R154 trans that I was going to put into it. I actually did put that motor and trans in that car, but unfortunately I never got to drive it. It was running in that car, but I never actually got to drive it. That kind of leads me to my next one. The reason that I pretty much stopped with that car is because my parents had an E46 chassis. It needed a transmission. I didn't really even want the motor. It was an automatic transmission. I didn't want the motor in it. So I got it for a good deal from them. It had full interior that was clean. The exterior was clean. And in my opinion, E46s they're a really good looking car. So I actually sold the S14, kept the motor, kept the trans, and bought their E46 from them. I put the 1J in it and the R154 in it. I got it running, but let me tell you, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that experience. At that point I didn't really have that much money, so trying to do swaps and stuff like that was a lot of give and take. We'll keep it at that. I pretty much cheaped out on things that I shouldn't have cheaped out on, and spent money, I guess, where I thought necessary at that time. But pretty much what ended up happening to that car is it ended up being kind of sketchy, to say the least. It was my first actually driving swap car I've ever owned. But I don't think I'm alone here whenever I say that, that your first go at something, especially by yourself without somebody there helping you along the way, can be a little sketchy. And that's exactly what that car was. It was very sketchy. A little bit after getting it running and driving, though, I actually started doing some more research on actually drifting them. And one thing that I ran into was that apparently they have a rear end issue in which the entire subframe wants to rip out of the car. Are there ways to fix this or try to fix this? Yeah, but at that time, I didn't really feel like, if that was already a problem in the car, I really didn't feel like I wanted to continue diving into that. And also, it got to the point where my wife wanted to kind of get involved with me. So I started doing some digging online, and I actually found that there was somebody who was selling a S13 hatch, and I found an S13 coupe. My wife loves the hatches, and I love the coupes. In my opinion, I think the coupe is a better looking chassis. In her opinion, the hatch was a better chassis. I actually found both of them, and so I was like, okay. So I ended up selling the E46. I had another 1J in the shop that I got a good deal on, and I just had it sitting around. So I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and sell the E46. So I sold the E46, and then after that, I actually drove S13 hatch, and I got the S13 coupe in the same day. So I got those back to the house. Unfortunately, I quickly realized that I wasn't able to afford to build two cars at one time. There was just absolutely no way at that time that I could have built two cars at the same time. So I really focused my attention on one car, and I chose the nicer of the two. The S13 hatch was, it was a gorgeous car. I think I was the second owner of that car. It stayed in one family. It went from pretty much like a grandpa that bought it, or a grandma that bought it in '89, and then it got transferred down to her son. And then I was pretty much, I guess, the third owner, but it stayed in one family pretty much its whole life until I purchased it. It was a gorgeous car. It was a rolling shell. It had Fortunato 500 coilovers with Swift springs. It had a Siki front sway bar. It had Z32 brakes all the way around. It had a GTR rear end in it, and some other odds and ends that really pushed it forward and got me a little bit closer to my goal, which was to have a really good running driving car. So sold the S13 coupe. And to put this in perspective too, I bought that S13 hatch with all of those additives, rolling, beautiful car, $1,500. That's what I bought that for. Good luck even buying a hood for less than that at this point. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I got that, and I went ahead and I put the 1J in it. I put the R154 in it. And I learned, like I said, I learned my lesson from the E46 on what to kind of cheap out on, what I can kind of get away with. And pretty much what I learned real fast is, you don't have to spend all your money on it, but there's certain things that you definitely want to spend your money on. Some of the issues that I had with my E46 was wiring. I had bugs with the wiring because I was using the stock harness, and the stock harness from the 1J 9VVTi especially, it's old, it's brittle, it's broke down. Who knows who's had their hands on it? They're just not good, so I didn't want any of those issues anymore. I looked up, found Wiring Specialties, sold a harness for that car, complete swap. I didn't have to mess with a thing. That was very appeasing to me, and I think that at that time, a full harness exactly how you want it, I think it was like $1,000 for that harness. So I dropped the money on that. Also, I went ahead and bought the CD009 transmission and the kit from Collins. I wasn't too much of a fan of the R154 at that time, and I was also worried about it breaking. I knew that I wasn't anywhere near the 700 horsepower kind of rating that's at, but I wanted the little bit lower of a gear ratio that the CD009 provided. So I decided I wanted to do the CD009. Let me clarify to anybody who is thinking about getting that transmission, it is an awesome transmission, especially for the price. I mean, brand new transmission from Nissan, you know, $2,000 to $2,500. I mean, that's crazy, especially with how good of transmissions that they are. And the ratio is very close to what the Supra is, so it's almost an identical swap for it. But I would never advise anybody to use a Collins adapter kit. I had so many problems with that kit; it was unreal. I think I went through three throwout bearings with that kit, and he just kept sending them to me, which is cool. The customer service aspect of it was good. The product was just terrible. The shifter, terrible. If I was going to go with it now, just throwing it out there, Serial 9 or nothing. I mean, it's just that they have an amazing kit, and that's the only one that I would go with. Anyways, so I bought the wiring specialty kit. I bought the CD009 with the Collins adapter kit, and I went ahead and bought Chase Bay's tucked radiator for that. I knew one of the problems that we were running into with the S13s, as everybody knows who's ever swapped one with a JZ, is room. There's not a whole lot of room for radiator and fan setup. So one of the biggest issues that you have with an S13 is overheating problems, especially with a JZ. So I wanted to get the biggest possible radiator fans that I could get and the best radiator that I could get. So I went to Chase Bay's and got their radiator and fan kit, and I was extremely happy with it. That combo, just so y'all know, if y'all are in the midst of this, it's expensive, don't get me wrong. The Raceline fans and then the tucked radiator from Chase Bay's, it's expensive. It's like $700 for that whole kit. But, I mean, the fans on that thing are incredible. I mean, literally, you could stand behind the car and feel the air coming below your feet. It was an incredible fan setup. So I got that taken care of. So I got all that stuff. I put it in the car. I learned a lesson real quick there as well. Whenever you have that much money invested into a car and you're new, there's a few problems with driving the car. You're nervous, for one. You don't want to wreck the car because you got so much money into it, and you're scared that, you know, something's going to happen to it, and then all of a sudden you're going to be out. You know what I'm saying? You're just not going to have enough money to fix it or whatever. So in my opinion, the S13 is not the best direction to go. So say if you don't even want to swap a JZ in it, or you want to swap an LS, or you want to swap this, or you want to swap that, to do it right, any of the swaps, I don't care what you're talking about, any of the swaps, to do a good quality swap that's going to last you. You know, in drifting, we're very hard on our cars, and we're very hard on the engines and transmissions to get something that's going to last that you don't have to work on all the time. I mean, just to swap that engine and transmission, your bare minimum of $6,000 to $7,000 after purchasing the car. And, you know, that just puts you in such a high bracket. And not to mention, after that, you've kind of messed with everything. So, in my opinion, aftermarket stuff isn't as good as factory stuff. Factory stuff is meant to last. Factory stuff is known for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of miles to drive it. So I believe that the longevity on factory stuff is just so much better than aftermarket. So, you know, say especially nowadays, you know, look at the prices of S13s, S14s. I mean, good luck trying to find a decent one for less than $6,000 or $7,000. I don't care if you're talking S13 or S14. You're gonna have trouble finding an okay chassis for that price. But here's the problem: it's still KA. Now I know that there's people out there that are still drifting the KAs and they're not having any problems with it. It's my opinion, though, that they don't have enough power. The stock KA just doesn't have enough power for you to progress, for you to learn and just start out drifting, yes, but not necessarily enough to really push the envelope and continue to progress. So once you hit that limit of, okay, I need more power now, it gets really expensive really fast for the S13 and the S14. So in my opinion, that's not the best chassis to start out with. The IS300 is probably the next one on the list. Why wouldn't I drive that? there's a few reasons I wouldn't drive that. One, if you've looked at the prices on IS300s, they're outrageous. I mean, I bought this car with the 1J already in it. It had a W58 trans, and I mean, I paid a lot of money for it, but whenever you really look at how much these cars are going for, I mean, a clean W58 manual IS300, 10 grand, that's what it's going to cost you just to get it. Clean title, clean car, manual, factory manual, 10 grand. I mean, that's outrageous. I mean, that's not even, you know, including really too much suspension going on, maybe some wheels and tires, you know, nothing that you really want or need to really get into drifting. So that kind of puts that out, you know, and especially once you start actually putting 1J or 2J or turbo and all this other stuff, you start getting back into that point of it costs too much money for what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is get into a car, drive it, drive the wheels off of it, and keep on going. So in between all those different cars, I actually did own a 350Z. It was a great car. It was a very fun car to drive. I just needed more room, and I ended up selling that one pretty quick. But I did go, you know, out. I did take it out to Mexico and throw it around a little bit while I had it, and it drove great. You know, even my S13, the 1J S13 I had, you know, I tossed it around a little bit. It's a really nice car to drive. You know, they're, in my opinion, they're about on the same playing field. Whenever I had the 350Z that I had, whenever I threw it around, whenever I told it to go somewhere, I pointed it in a certain direction, it went there. The S13, it was the same way. They felt a lot alike, but you could tell that the 350 was a lot more. It was heavier car. Definitely, it was down on power compared to my S13 as well. But both of them were on the same playing field. The IS300, this one, you're asking yourself, okay, well, you already have this. Why wouldn't you just go ahead and drift it? This is a lot of, I don't know if a lot of you know or not, this has a 1J VVTi in it. It has a Tomei turbo. It has an ID 1150cc injectors, a Walbro 450 pump, and a few other little odds and ends on it. It's making 500 horsepower to the wheels. 500 horsepower is too much. To start, it's a little bit too much. The next thing, they didn't make a whole lot of those cars. I don't know if y'all know, actually, they didn't make a whole lot of these. I think the grand total of IS300s that were made in their entire production in the United States, I think was somewhere in the 83,000 range. So you put that together. Airplanes, man, airplanes. Trying to have a discussion. So you put that together, and it's a 20-year-old car. How many of them are left on the road? So then you run into issues where parts are expensive, parts are a little bit harder to find, and the cars themselves are very expensive. So it's just not a good one. In my opinion, it's not a good one. Would you guys enjoy it? For me to throw this thing around, the noises, how it looks, all this other stuff, of course. And I would too. But it's just too expensive of a car to just be throwing around, especially whenever you're learning. So, what is my opinion on the best seat time car? 350Z. So much and so that y'all don't even know this, but I bought another one. So the backstory on that is, this is my wife's car. This is basically my wife's car. You know, I knew whenever I bought that car that was pretty much going to be her fun car that she can kind of kick around. Here's the backstory on this. And this is why I am thinking, this is why I know 100% that this is the best seat time car. I bought this car for $5,800. Now, the outside's rough. You know, it's primered, it's red on the door, it's red on the fender, it's black the other fender, you know. But here's the thing, I paid $5,800 for this car. It has bash bar front, bash bar rear, bash bar sides, has a welded diff, It has BC coilovers all the way. It has BC coilovers on it. It has a Siki hydro kit on it with dual calipers in the rear. It's got Brembo brakes all the way around. It's got full control arms, front and rear. I'm able to control the caster camber toe all the way around this car. I bought this car for $5,800. The engine is almost 300 horsepower from the factory. You feel it, especially whenever you take all that weight out of it. It's a whole lot faster. It's a whole lot faster than what a stock KA will ever be. So, you don't have to touch them. You don't have to touch the engine. It's got a CD009 in it. We've already talked about how durable the transmissions are. So, you don't really have to worry about that. So, you have a factory car that has enough power for you to learn and progress. There's already a big aftermarket support for them, so arms and suspension and everything like that isn't crazy expensive, and they're everywhere. You can get parts if you touch a wall, touch a barrier, touch something like that, and you want another fender for it for whatever reason, you can get one. And there's parts cars for them everywhere. So 350Z, definitely. So maybe you're thinking, oh well, that was just a fluke. You got lucky whenever you bought that one for $5,800. Well, then how do you explain this one? So that's a 2003, by the way. This is a 2006. 2006 with 130,000 miles on it. Welded diff, GK Tech, hydro, dual calipers in the rear. All of the control arms are adjustable, front and rear. It's got Raceland coilovers on it. So, like I said, it's pretty much ready to go. The only thing it really doesn't have that this one has is a GK angle kit. Well, I bought one. Guess how much it cost? $340. Name a kit for the S14, S13, E46, IS300 that you can buy for $340 and get their advertised 60 degrees of front angle for $340. That's hard to beat. So I bought one for this, and that's going to go on, and that's going to be on a video down in the future for us. But I bought this car for $5,000. So no, it's not a fluke. They are just hands down, no arguments needed, the best car for a seat time car, hands down. The other topic that I wanted to go over is going to drift events, or just events in general. It doesn't matter if you're drag racing, circle track, drifting, whatever you want to do, downforce battles. Some of the obstacles that I ran into with going to drift events, especially with the cars that I had in the past, I was nervous. I was worried that I was going to embarrass myself, or that the car was going to break down, or this, that, whatever. As far as the car breaking down, just do your best to do your maintenance, do your bolt checks, make sure everything's tight, make sure everything's right, and then go out there. That's the best advice that I can possibly give you. Go. Stop worrying about it. Nobody's going to make fun of you. Every single person that is out there drifting with you, it was their first time once. So ignore them. Don't even worry about it. Don't ignore the crowd that's in the stands. Ignore the people that are behind you in the staging line. Ignore all of them. Just go out and drive. It's the only way that you're going to understand how to do it. So the next questions that I had was, okay, well, man, how much tires do you use? What's all involved in actually going to your first drift event? Those are the questions that I had, and I really couldn't find any answers for them. You have some of the bigger names on YouTube that'll give you some information, say like Taylor Ray. I think he's a pretty good example of it because he tries to give as much information about this kind of things as he can. And I think that he does a pretty good job at it, but the problem with Taylor Ray and most of the people that are on YouTube that most of us probably watch, they're in a whole different ballgame. They're in a whole different field than what we are. I mean, you're talking about 1,000 horsepower cars, money to spend on these 1,000 horsepower cars. tire sponsors, and all this. So even though Taylor Ray has told us before on his Corvette, you know, how many laps he can go without burning down a set of Nittos, that's a whole different caliber of car than the majority of us are running. So that's also probably not the tire that any of us are running because of the cost of them. So a little background on these. So I actually bought 4 tires offline, cheap, $83 a piece. It's a 380 treadwear tire. The rears are 235 40 18s, I think. And basically out of all 4 of those tires, I went to 4 drift events. Sorry. Yeah, 4 drift events. Yeah, I went to 4 drift events and also did some Mexico driving. $360 pretty much shipped to my door, and I got 4 drift events out of those tires. I'm going to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 runs between all of them, you know, including the Mexico driving, you know, about 60 runs out of a whole set of tires. Another thing that I had questions about, and I kind of jumped the gun on, is I thought, oh, well, whenever you go to the drift event, you want to have spare rims and spare tires, and, you know, like Taylor Ray and all them, they have rims for days and tires for days. Tires, yes. Wheels, not so much. I'm at the point now where I pretty much have one set. I have the fronts, which are a little bit bigger of a tire. They're a 245 instead of a 235, and you don't really ever have to worry about those, especially with these cars making that kind of power. You don't really ever have to worry about those. The rears, I would bring another set, a brand new set with you, like of tires, but the wheels, just have them on the car. You know, bring them with you. The wheels, the rims and tires with you, and if you burn those down, most places have a mount and balance service there at the track for you, so you don't even really have to worry about it. So I would just get your set of wheels that you want for the car. Me personally, I would put a bigger set on the front, especially starting out. Put a bigger set on the front and then a smaller set on the rear. Kind of get used to that, and then maybe step up your grip level from there. But yeah, don't go out and spend a bunch of money on a bunch of different wheels and, you know, think that that's what you have to do. You already have to have a mount and a balance before you go. No. Lanier has a shop there that does mount and balance. I can't remember how much it is. I think it's like $10 or $15 a tire or something like that to mount and balance them. Just do that. I mean, you're not going to go through, with a car like this, you're not going to go through 4 tires in a night. It's just not going to happen. You know, you'll probably have some scrubs that are on there from your last drift event, and you'll have some brand new ones in the back, you know, ready to install whenever you're ready. And you burn your scrubs down, go and mount your new ones. Easy as that. So that's kind of my overview. That's kind of my opinion on it. Like I said, I just can't beat the price, the availability on these cars. You just can't. So if y'all enjoyed this kind of content, please let me know down in the comments below. If you haven't seen any other videos from me, or if you want to kind of watch what I mean with this car, on especially on learning, there's 3 or 4 drifting videos now on my YouTube channel. Just go watch them, you know, and it'll kind of give an overview on what Lanier looks like. If you're anywhere near the Brazelton area in Georgia, then definitely come out. Every other Friday they have their event. They throw an amazing event. It's definitely somewhere to go. And honestly, I can tell you too, from Mexico driving to driving on a track, it's night and day. If you ever get to drive on a track, you don't want to go to Mexico and do some drifting that may or may not be permissible. So thank you guys for watching, especially if you made it this far. I really appreciate it. If y'all have any questions, please leave them down in the comments. I'll try to get to every single one of them. Thank y'all for watching, and look forward for the next one.